flame of salvation. Friends, before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell so you never miss a new audiobook, and give this video a thumbs up. Thank you in advance. The war between the Kingdom of Light and the creeping shadows had lasted for a generation, etching its scars into the land and the souls of those who fought it. Kael, known as Kael to the few who still dared to speak his name, carried those scars not just on his flesh, but deep within, where the light of his spirit had once burned. He was returning from it now, not to fanfare or a hero's welcome, but to the only peace he had ever known: his family. The border town of Ashvale lay cradled in a rugged valley, a stubborn outpost of stubborn people. The soil was thin, the wind carried the gritty kiss of the nearby blighted sands, and the sunsets were a prolonged, bloody affair. To Kael it was paradise. Here, he was not a weapon of the Lumina King, not a master of the searing light sigils that could peel back the darkness. He was a husband, a father. He rode ahead of the creaking wagon, his gaze the color of a stormy sky, constantly scanning the jagged horizon. Years of campaigning had honed his instincts into a razor's edge, and though the official missives declared this region pacified, the air itself felt watchful. "Papa, look! The spires!" A young voice piped up from the wagon. Kael turned, and the hard planes of his face softened. Leor, no more than 7 summers old, was pointing at the twisted rock formations that crowned the valley's edge, his small hand clutching a roughly carved wooden griffin. Beside him, her auburn hair catching the last of the sun's rays like embers, was Alara. She smiled, a gesture that still had the power to unman him, to make the memories of screaming battlefields and dying friends recede into a dull hum. "The sentinel spires, my love," Alara said, her voice a gentle melody against the harsh landscape. "It means we're almost home." Home. The word was a fragile, precious thing in Kael's chest. The small stone cottage with its herb garden and view of the valley was his sanctuary, a dream he had clung to during the long dark nights in the trenches of the shadow reaches. "Just over the next ridge," Kael confirmed, his voice a low rumble. He nudged his weary horse forward, the animal's hooves kicking up puffs of pale dust. He could feel the latent power in the land here, a thin, strained vein of light magic that had been bled almost dry by the constant, low-grade conflict with the blighted sands. It was a place of endings and edges, where the world felt thin. They reached the cottage as dusk began to bleed into proper night. It was just as he remembered, though perhaps a little more worn by the elements. The simple act of unloading their meager possessions, a trunk of clothes, Alara's precious books on healing herbs, Leor's toys, felt more sacred than any victory ceremony. He carried Leor, already half asleep, into the small bedroom, tucking him beneath a thick wool blanket. "Will there be monsters here, Papa?" Leor murmured, his eyes heavy. Kael's hand, which had slain creatures of nightmare that would curdle a grown man's blood, stroked his son's hair with impossible tenderness. "The light protects this house, Leor. I've made sure of it. No monsters." It was a lie, but a necessary one. The true monsters were not mindless beasts. They were cunning, they were patient, and they were led by wills as sharp and cruel as obsidian. Later, with Leor asleep, Kael stood on the small porch, looking out at the pinpricks of light in the town below. Alara came to stand beside him, her warmth seeping into his side. She leaned her head against his shoulder. "You're still there, aren't you?" she asked softly. "Part of you is still out there in the war." Kael sighed, the sound weary beyond his years. "It clings to you, Alara, like a smell you can't wash off." The darkness, it gets inside. But the light is stronger, she insisted, her faith a solid, unshakable thing. She placed a hand on his chest over his heart. It's in here. It always has been. He covered her hand with his own, the calluses on his palms a stark contrast to her soft skin. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to shed the armor of vengeance he had worn for so long and simply be the man she saw. Inside, they built a small fire in the hearth. The flames danced, casting long, playful shadows that Kael's trained eyes tracked with unconscious suspicion. Elara hummed an old lullaby, the one she used to sing to Leor. For a single perfect hour, wrapped in the simple domesticity of it all, Kael felt the knot of tension in his soul begin to loosen. This was his salvation. This was enough. The peace was shattered by the howl of a wolf. But it was wrong. The sound was too high, too layered, too intelligent. It was not a wolf. Kael was on his feet in an instant, the soldier overriding the husband. "Elara," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "Take Leor. Go to the root cellar. Now." Her eyes widened, but years of being a soldier's wife had taught her not to question. She moved swiftly, scooping up a drowsy Leor from his bed. Kael's hands glowed with a soft, golden light as he traced the sigils of warding on the doorframe and windows. The ancient symbols flared briefly, weaving a net of protective energy around the cottage. He grabbed his sword from its place by the door, the familiar weight a cold comfort. Outside, the night had gone utterly still. The crickets were silent. The wind had died. The only sound was the frantic beating of his own heart. Then shadows at the edge of the tree line began to detach themselves, moving with an unnatural liquid grace. They were the shadow-born, creatures not born of nature but carved from the very essence of the void. And at their head was a figure that made the air grow cold. Morgar. He was tall, his form seeming to drink the faint light from the stars. He was not a man, but a demonic warlord, his armor like chitinous night, his face a pale, cruel mask with eyes that burned with the color of spoiled blood. In one hand he held a blade that seemed to be a shard of solidified darkness. "Kaelin of the Lumina Guard." Morgar's voice was a dry rasp like stone grinding on stone. "The king's favorite hound. Did you think you could hide from your fate in this hovel?" Kael stood his ground, his light sigils blazing to life around his fists. "This is not your domain, creature. Leave now, and I will grant you the mercy of a swift death." Morgar laughed, a sound that promised agony. "You grant nothing, little light. We are here for the wellspring, the one that sleeps beneath this very soil. And you are in the way." The Shadowborn surged forward. Kael met them, his sword a blur of golden energy. He was a whirlwind of destruction, every movement precise, every strike fatal. Light erupted from his blade, searing through the shadowy forms, turning them to dissipating smoke. He fought with the fury of a man defending his entire world, which he was. But Morgar did not engage. He watched, a predator assessing its prey. Then, his burning gaze shifted from Kael to the cottage. With a casual flick of his wrist, Morgar unleashed a wave of pure anti-light, a void that consumed sound and substance. It struck the cottage. The sigils of warding flared in a brilliant, desperate burst of gold, and then shattered like glass. "No!" Kael's roar was raw, torn from the depths of his soul. He tried to fight his way back, but the Shadowborn were endless, clinging to him like tar. He saw Morgar stride calmly through the ruined doorway, The world slowed to a nightmare crawl. He saw the warlord's silhouette in the doorway of the back room. He heard Alara's single, choked cry of defiance cut short. He heard a small, terrified whimper that was so abruptly silenced it left a void in the universe. Something inside Kael broke. Not just his heart, but the very core of his being. A wave of incandescent power, white-hot and uncontrolled, exploded from him. It vaporized the Shadowborn around him and hurled him backward into the trees. When he came to, the world was on fire. His cottage was a pyre, flames clawing at the night sky, the heat blistering his skin. The light from the fire was a mockery of the light he had once wielded. He stumbled through the wreckage, his body screaming in protest, his soul already in ashes. He found them near the root cellar door. Alara was curled around Leor, as if her own body could have been a shield. It had not. The life, the light, the future, everything that had given his life meaning was gone, extinguished by a darkness that felt absolute. Kael fell to his knees. He did not weep. The pain was too vast for tears. It was a cataclysm that hollowed him out, leaving only a cavern of rage and grief. He gathered their bodies in his arms, their stillness a blasphemy against the memory of their warmth. The wooden griffin, half-charred, lay near Leor's outstretched hand. As dawn began to bleed its pale, indifferent light over the valley, Kael buried his wife and son on the hill overlooking the home that had lasted a single night. He marked the graves with 2 simple stones. Then he took the charred griffin and tucked it into a pouch on his belt. He looked towards the blighted sands from whence Morgar had come. The man who had hoped for peace was dead, buried in that same scorched earth. What rose from it was something else entirely. A vessel for vengeance. A creature of pure, undiluted purpose. He touched the luminous sigil branded into his palm, the mark of his oath to the light. It felt cold. "I will find you, Morgar," he whispered to the uncaring wind, his voice a gravelly promise. "I will hunt you through every shadow, across every hellscape, and I will make you feel the void you have left in me. This I swear on their souls." The flame of salvation had been extinguished. All that remained was the ember of revenge, burning cold and dark in his heart. And it was enough. It would have to be. The world had become a monochrome of grief. For weeks, Kael was a ghost haunting the fringes of Ashvale, a grim specter that the townsfolk crossed the street to avoid. He drank in the dim, smoke-filled tavern, not to numb the pain but to feed it. The cheap, bitter ale was fuel for the furnace of his hatred. He spoke to no one, his stormy eyes seeing nothing but the memory of fire and the face of the demon who had lit the match. He asked questions, his voice a low, dangerous rasp. He traded the last of his army coin for whispers, for rumors of Shadowborn sightings, for tales of a warlord gathering strength in the cursed wastes. The answers were always the same, spoken with fearful glances towards the desert. Morgar was a myth, a story to scare children. He had vanished into the blighted sands, a shifting, treacherous expanse where the very laws of light and shadow were said to unravel. It was in the tavern, on a night when the rain lashed against the grimy windows like thrown gravel, that he heard a different kind of whisper. It came from a one-eyed trapper, his face a roadmap of old scars, huddled over a mug of spiced liquor. "Aye, the Wraith Lord moves," the man muttered, more to his drink than to anyone listening. "He's dug his claws into the sunken city. Not a place for the living, that. Not since the great Shadowfall." Kael's hand, wrapped around his own tankard, stilled. The sunken city. an ancient ruin half swallowed by the sands, a place where the veil between the world of light and the realm of shadow was said to be tissue thin. It was a death sentence. It was a destination. Where do you hear this? Kael's voice cut through the tavern's murmur, making the trapper jump. The man looked up, his single eye widening as it took in Kael's broad shoulders, the military set of his jaw, the palpable aura of violence that clung to him like a shroud. I trade furs and information. Heard it from a source. A woman. Came out of the sands herself, more dead than alive. Said she'd been his guest. Where is she? The question was a command. The trapper paled. The old watchtower. East of the salt flats. But listen, friend, she's broken. Talks in riddles. And she's touched by the shadow. You can see it in her eyes. It's not safe. Kael dropped a silver coin on the man's table. It was more than he'd paid for a drink in a week. Nothing is safe, he said, and walked out into the storm. The journey to the watchtower was a 2-day ride through a landscape slowly being claimed by desolation. The salt flats were a cracked, blinding white expanse under a merciless sun, and the air grew thick with the metallic tang of ozone and decay. The tower itself was a skeletal finger of black stone clawing at the sky, a relic from a war fought centuries ago. Inside, the air was cold and still. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light piercing the collapsed roof. And there, huddled in a corner on a bed of ragged blankets, was the woman, Selena. At first, she seemed little more than a collection of sharp angles and shadows. Her hair was the color of raven's wings, a stark frame for a face that was all pale skin and haunted, luminous eyes. Those eyes, the color of twilight, held a depth of suffering that mirrored his own. But there was something else in them, a flicker of keen intelligence, a resilience that had not yet been fully extinguished. She watched him enter without surprise, as if she had been expecting him. You are the one they call the widower of Ashvale, she said. Her voice was husky, worn thin by sand and sorrow, but it was not weak. My name is Kael. Names are a luxury for those with pasts, she replied, pulling her thin shawl tighter. I have none. He saw it then, the faint tracery of darkness that seemed to swim just beneath her skin. A living tattoo of violet and indigo that pulsed with a slow, somber rhythm. The trapper had been right. She was touched by shadow. His every instinct, honed by a lifetime of war, screamed at him to raise his light, to purge the corruption from this place. But he saw the way she held herself, the defensive hunch of her shoulders. She was not a predator. She was prey just as he was. I seek Morgar, Kael stated, his tone leaving no room for dissembling. A bitter, hollow laugh escaped her. Many seek him. Most become part of the scenery of his domain, bones for the sand to polish. I am not most. He took a step closer, and she flinched, a barely perceptible recoil that spoke volumes of her past. He stopped, his hands open at his sides in a gesture he hoped was non-threatening. The trapper said you were his captive. You know where he is. The sunken city. Her twilight eyes studied him, weighing his soul. Why? So you can die and join your family? Revenge is a cold companion on a long journey. It will not keep you warm at night. The mention of his family was a physical blow, but he did not let it show. It is all I have left. Tell me what you know. For a long moment she was silent. The only sound was the wind whistling through the tower's broken ribs. Then she spoke, her gaze turning inward to a place of nightmares. He is there. In the heart of the city, in the palace that was once made of crystal and is now a cage of nightmares. He seeks an artifact, the Oculus of Midnight, an ancient lens that can focus the power of the void. With it, he won't just command shadows. He will extinguish the source of light itself. He will make this world a tomb. Kael's jaw tightened. It was worse than he had imagined. This was not mere banditry. It was a crusade of annihilation. How do I stop him? You cannot. Not with your sword alone. His power is tied to the land there, to the curses that bleed from the stones. You need to break his connection. Shatter the ward spires that channel the shadow energy to him. And you know where these spires are? I know the path, she said softly. I was forced to help build the ritual circles around one of them. I was his key. My blood, tainted as it is, can resonate with the spires. I can find them. Hope, a sharp and dangerous thing, pricked at the shell of his heart. Then you will take me. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. Why would I go back? Why would I help you? A stranger whose only goal is a glorious death. Because you want him dead as much as I do, Kael said, his voice dropping low. I see it in your eyes. It's the same look I see in my reflection. Help me destroy him, and you will have your vengeance too. Selena looked away, out through a crack in the wall towards the vast, menacing expanse of the blighted sands. The shadowy tracery on her arm seemed to writhe, as if in agitation. Vengeance, she whispered, tasting the word. It is a poison. I have drunk it for so long. I fear it is all I am now. She turned her gaze back to him, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of something besides pain, a spark of defiance. But if there is a chance, even the slimmest chance, to break his chains to ensure no one else suffers as you have, she took a deep, shuddering breath. I will take you to the sunken city. But you must understand, Kael of Ashvale. The moment we cross into those sands, we are in his world. Your light will be a flickering candle in a hurricane. And my darkness, it may be the only thing that keeps us alive. She stood, unfolding herself with a grace that belied her apparent fragility. She was taller than he had expected. We leave at first light. We will need supplies. And you will need to learn to trust the shadows, warrior of light. For in the place we are going, they are the only truth. As she began to gather her meager possessions, Kael watched her. This broken, shadow-touched woman was his guide into hell. She was a living contradiction, a victim of the darkness he hated, yet now his only ally against it. The ember of revenge in his chest flared, but for the first time, it was joined by another feeling, unsettling and unfamiliar. A thread of connection, spun from the shared silk of their suffering. The path to Morgar was no longer a solitary one. The blighted sands were a living embodiment of despair. The sun was a malevolent, white eye in a sky the color of bruised flesh. The air shimmered with a heat that felt hungry, leaching the moisture from skin and soul alike. Strange, twisted rock formations rose from the dunes like the bones of long-dead leviathans, and the wind did not whisper but hissed, carrying the gritty taste of ancient ash and forgotten magic. Kael moved through this hellscape with a soldier's dogged endurance, his senses stretched taut. Every shadow cast by the skeletal trees seemed to writhe with a life of its own. His light sigils, usually a comforting warmth in his palms, felt muted, as if the very air was resisting their glow. Selena, in contrast, seemed to become more substantial the deeper they ventured. She moved with an innate knowledge of the land, her steps silent on the shifting sand. The tracery of shadow beneath her skin pulsed with a soft, rhythmic light, a faint echo of the land's corrupted heartbeat. She was his compass, her inherent connection to the darkness guiding them around sinkholes that whispered with lost voices, and through canyons where the walls seemed to bleed a black, viscous fluid. They spoke little. The enormity of the task and the oppressive atmosphere stifled conversation. But in the silence, a fragile understanding began to knit itself between them. He saw the way she would pause, her eyes closing as she sensed a pocket of concentrated malice he was blind to. She, in turn, watched the rigid set of his shoulders, the way his hand never strayed far from the hilt of his sword. A man braced against a world he had been trained to destroy. On the third day, they reached the canyons of echoing sorrow. The name was Apartment. The moment they stepped between the towering black sandstone cliffs, a psychic wail pressed in on them, a residual echo of some long-ago massacre. Kael gritted his teeth, the sound scraping against the raw edges of his grief. "This place remembers pain," Selena said, her voice barely a whisper, yet it carried perfectly in the unnatural stillness. "It's just an echo," Kael grunted, forcing the words out. "Is it?" She stopped and placed a hand flat against the stone. The violet patterns on her skin flared. "The shadow does not just corrupt, it preserves, feeds on strong emotion. The agony of this place is a feast that has never ended." As if summoned by her words, the shadows at the far end of the canyon deepened, coalescing into forms of Claw and Fong. A pack of shadehounds, creatures of solidified hunger with eyes like smoldering coals, emerged from the rock itself. They moved with a liquid, silent menace surrounding them. Kael's sword was in his hand in an instant, light blazing along the blade. "Get behind me!" But Selena stood her ground. "No, your light will only enrage them here. It is a challenge." "Then what do you suggest?" he snapped, his body tensing for the fight. "Show them something they do not understand," she said, her gaze locked on the approaching alpha. "Show them stillness." Before he could protest, she stepped forward, directly into the path of the lead beast. Kael's heart hammered against his ribs. He saw the hound coil ready to spring. He raised his sword, ready to intervene. But Selena did not flinch. She closed her eyes and the darkness around her shifted. It did not attack. It embraced her. The shadows at her feet swirled, not with malice, but with a strange melancholic grace. The shadehounds slowed, their low growls faltering. They sniffed the air, confused. They were predators of fear and violent light. But this quiet acceptance of the dark was an alien language. Selena began to hum, a low, haunting melody that was the twin to the canyon's own lament. The shadowy tracery on her skin flowed like water, and for a moment, she seemed to be made of the same substance as the hounds, a part of the canyon's sorrowful soul. The alpha hound let out a soft whine, then turned and melted back into the cliff face. The rest of the pack followed, dissipating like smoke. The canyon fell silent once more, the psychic wail now a subdued thrum. Kael slowly lowered his sword, the light fading from its edge. He stared at Selena as she turned back to him, her expression weary but resolute. She had not fought the darkness. She had navigated it. She had used the very thing he despised as a shield. "How did you do that?" he asked, his voice thick with a confusion that went deeper than battle tactics. "I told you," she said softly, wrapping her arms around herself. "In this place, the shadows are the only truth. They are not your enemy, Kael. They are a force like the wind or the sea. You can rage against them and drown, or you can learn to read their currents." He had no answer. The rigid dogma of the Lumina Guard, that all shadow was a blight to be cleansed, cracked ever so slightly. He saw the cost of her act. The violet under her eyes was darker, the strain evident in the slight tremor of her hands. Wielding this power even peacefully took its toll. That night they made camp in a shallow cave, a rare pocket of shelter. A half-moon tinged with green cast a sickly light over the sands. The memory of the Shadehounds hung between them, a silent challenge to everything Kael believed. He found himself watching her as she stared into their small, contained fire. The flames danced in her twilight eyes, and for the first time, he did not see an agent of the enemy. He saw a woman unbearably lonely, carrying a burden as heavy as his own. "Who were you?" he asked, the question leaving his lips before he could stop it. "Before Morgar." She didn't look at him for a long time. When she did, her gaze was distant. "I was a scholar in a village on the edge of the Whispering Woods. We studied the old magics, the balance. We believed light and shadow were two sides of the same coin." A bitter smile touched her lips. "Morgar's raiders thought our knowledge was a key. They were right. They took me for my affinity, for my ability to listen to the dark without going mad. He broke my village on the wheel of his ambition, and he forged me into a tool." The confession hung in the air, a shared scar. Kael thought of Alara, of her healing herbs and gentle songs, destroyed for a wellspring of power. Their losses were mirrors. "He took everything from you too," Kael said, not as a question but as a statement of shared truth. "He took my name, my past, my freedom." She met his eyes across the fire. "But he could not take my will. Not completely. A small quiet part of me remained my own. It is the part that guides you now." The thread of connection between them tightened, pulling taut. The ember of revenge in Kael's chest was still there, burning hot and bright, but now another feeling was growing beside it, fragile as a desert flower, a profound, terrifying empathy. He reached into the pouch on his belt and pulled out the half-charred wooden griffin. He didn't say anything, just held it in his palm, the firelight catching the grooves of the tiny, clumsy wings. Selena's eyes fell upon it. She didn't offer pity or empty condolences. She simply looked at the token of his loss with a deep, understanding sorrow. "We are both ghosts," she whispered, "haunted by the people we used to be." Kael closed his fingers around the griffin. For 7 years his heart had been a fortress of grief and rage, its gates sealed shut. Now he felt the first hairline fracture appear in the stone, and a sliver of light, not the harsh light of vengeance, but a softer, more vulnerable glow began to seep in. The path ahead was still paved with blood and shadow, but he was no longer walking it alone. The blighted sands gave way to a landscape of nightmare. The ground hardened into a cracked obsidian plain, and the air grew thick and cold, carrying the scent of ozone and rust. In the distance, the sunken city rose from the wastes, a graveyard of impossible architecture. Towers leaned at drunken angles, their spires clawing at the green-tinged sky. Grand archways led to nothingness, and the skeletons of palaces were half swallowed by the black glass of the earth. This was not a place that had fallen to ruin. It was a place that had been unmade. "The veil is thin here," Selena murmured, her voice tense. She pointed towards the center of the city, where a massive, jagged structure pulsed with a slow, sickening rhythm of violet light. "The central spire. That is his nest." The ward spires we must break form a triangle around it. Their first target was the Spire of Sorrows, located in what had once been the city's Grand Plaza. Getting there was a descent into a waking dream of horror. Whispers slithered from alleyways, speaking in the voices of the dead. Phantasmal figures flickered at the edge of vision, reenacting their final moments of terror. Kael's light sigils flared instinctively, pushing back the oppressive atmosphere, but the effort was like trying to hold back the tide with his bare hands. The plaza was a vast, circular expanse paved with onyx. In its center, the ward spire was a twisted obelisk of the same black glass as the ground, etched with runes that bled shadow. A low thrum of power emanated from it, a vibration that set Kael's teeth on edge. Around its base, a complex ritual circle was drawn in what looked like powdered bone and ash. "This is the first anchor," Selena said, her eyes fixed on the spire. "Its energy feeds the central focus, strengthening the barrier around Morgar and fueling his work on the oculus." As they approached, the shadows around the spire congealed. This was no pack of mindless hounds. 6 sentinel wraiths, taller than a man and clad in ethereal armor that drank the light, materialized. They were Morgar's personal guard, their forms shifting between solid and smoke, and they held blades of pure coldness. "There is no navigating this, Selena," Kael said, his voice grim as he drew his sword. The golden light that wreathed the blade was a defiant challenge in the gloom. "This is a fight." "I know," she replied, her own hands coming up. The shadow tracery on her skin ignited, not with violent intent, but with a purpose he had not seen before. "But we fight together. Your light, my shadow. Not against each other, but as one." The wraiths attacked with silent, lethal speed. Kael met the first one, his light blade clashing against the wraith's shadow steel with a shriek that tore at the air. The force of the blow numbed his arm. These were not mere creatures. They were fragments of Morgar's own will. He fought with the controlled fury of a master warrior, his movements a dance of death he had perfected on 100 battlefields. But for every wraith he parried, another would phase through his guard, its chilling touch searing his skin with frostbite. He was holding his own, but barely. He was a rock against a shadowy sea, being slowly worn away. "Kael now." Selena's voice cut through the din of battle. He risked a glance. She was not attacking the wraiths directly. Instead, she was weaving her own power into the ritual circle at the spire's base. Tendrils of violet energy, gentle and coaxing, probed at the runes, seeking a weakness, a flaw in the design she had been forced to help create. A wraith took advantage of his distraction. It phased through his defensive stance, its blade aiming for his heart. There was no time to block. A shield of interwoven light and darkness erupted between them. It was Kael's golden radiance, but shot through with Selena's deep violet. The wraith's sword shattered against it. The creature recoiled, its form flickering in confusion. The two opposing forces, held in perfect, precarious balance, had created something new, something stronger. Their eyes met across the plaza, his wide with shock, hers blazing with fierce certainty. "Trust me," she cried. And he did. In that split second, with death staring him in the face, he let go of a lifetime of doctrine and let his light flow, not to repel her shadow, but to meet it. "Again!" he shouted. He focused his will, and a lance of pure sunlight erupted from his palm. At the same moment, Selena unleashed a concentrated beam of pure void. Instead of canceling each other out, they spiraled together, a helix of dawn and dusk, and struck the ward spire. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The obelisk shrieked, a sound of tearing reality. The runes flared a violent, blinding purple and then went dark. A web of cracks spread from its peak to its base, and with a final groaning shudder, the spire of sorrows exploded into a cloud of inert black dust. The sentinel wraiths wailed, their forms destabilizing without the spire's energy to sustain them, and dissolved into the air. Silence descended, broken only by Kael's ragged breaths. He stood amidst the settling dust, his body aching, his mind reeling. He looked at his hands, then at Selena. She was leaning heavily against a fallen pillar, exhaustion etched on her face, but her eyes were triumphant. You merged them," he said, the concept still foreign on his tongue. "They were never meant to be apart," she replied, her voice weak but firm. "Light without shadow is blinding. Shadow without light is formless. They are two halves of a whole." The truth of it resonated deep within him, in a place beyond training, beyond war, beyond vengeance. He had spent his life seeing the world in stark contrasts of good and evil, light and dark. Selena had shown him the spectrum in between. The love he had for Ilara and Lior had been pure light. The rage he felt for Morgar was pure dark. But what was growing between him and this mysterious, wounded, powerful woman? It was something else entirely. It was the dawn after a long night, the gray area where all things were possible. He walked to her, offering a hand. She took it, her grip surprisingly strong. Her skin was warm where it met his, the shadowy tracery a stark, beautiful contrast. "One down," she said softly, her twilight eyes holding his. "Two to go," he answered. But the words felt different now. The goal was no longer just revenge. It was prevention. It was salvation. And for the first time since the fire, he believed it might be possible. The flame in his heart was no longer just an ember of revenge. It was being stoked into something new, something that burned with a cleaner, brighter heat. The flame of something like hope. The second ward spire, the spire of longing, stood within the husk of a cathedral whose roof had been torn away by some forgotten cataclysm. Its destruction was a quieter, more insidious battle. Here the curse was not of violence but of memory. The very stones whispered of lost loves and abandoned hopes, projecting phantoms of what could have been. For Kael it was a fresh descent into hell. He saw Ilara not as a corpse, but as she was in life, standing by the broken altar, her hand outstretched, a smile on her lips. He saw Lior, grown to a young man, practicing sword forms with a stick. The visions were so vivid, so achingly real, that his resolve wavered, his light flickering with the intensity of his grief. "It's not real, Kael." Selena's voice was an anchor in the storm of his heart. She stood beside him, her own face a mask of pain as she faced her own phantoms. A family that was no more. A life of study and peace torn to shreds. It feeds on our regret. It twists our love into a weapon. He watched as a shadowy replica of his former self, the man he was before the war, beckoned to him, offering a life of peace in this illusion. The temptation was a physical ache. To let go of the pain, to live in a beautiful lie. But then he looked at Selena. He saw the realness of her struggle, the sweat on her brow as she fought the spire's influence, the solidity of her presence beside him. The love for his lost family was a sacred tomb. But it was in the past. This woman here and now was his present. Her survival mattered. With a roar that was part anguish, part liberation, he channeled his light not against the phantoms, but into himself, forging a shield of pure will. He turned his back on the ghost of Valera, his heart breaking anew, but his purpose solidified. He took Selena's hand. "Together," he said, his voice raw. Their combined power, the helix of gold and violet, shattered the spire of longing not with a cataclysmic explosion, but with a sound like a sigh of release. The phantoms faded, their whispers falling silent, finally at peace. In the aftermath, standing in the dust of the fallen spire, something fundamental had shifted. The space between them was charged, electric with unspoken truths. The shared victory, the shared pain had eroded the last of the walls between them. That night, camped in a relatively stable chamber deep within the city's underbelly, the tension broke. They were cleaning their weapons, the silence comfortable yet thick with anticipation. Their hands brushed as they reached for the same water skin, and they both stilled. Kael looked at her, truly looked at her. He saw the strength in the line of her jaw, the wisdom in her twilight eyes, the beautiful, terrible burden she carried with such grace. He saw not a shadow-touched victim, but a savior. "Selena," he whispered, her name a prayer on his lips. It was all the invitation she needed. She closed the small distance between them, her hand coming up to cup his cheek. Her touch was not cold, as he might have once feared, but warm, alive. It sent a shockwave through his entire being. He leaned into her touch, his own hand coming to rest on her waist, pulling her closer. When their lips met, it was not a clash but a confluence. It was the final perfect merging of their two worlds. His light did not seek to purify her shadow. It illuminated it, revealing its hidden depths and beauty. Her shadow did not seek to smother his light. It gave it contrast, meaning, and shape. The kiss was a confession, an absolution, and a promise. It was the healing of a wound he thought would bleed forever. They did not speak of love. The word was too small, too simple for the cosmic realignment happening within their souls. They spoke with touches, with breaths, with the silent language of two broken halves finding their whole. In the quiet dark, surrounded by the ruins of a dead city, they found a reason to live, not just for vengeance, but for each other. The next morning, as they prepared to face the final spire, their bond was a tangible force. They moved in perfect sync, a single entity with two hearts. The final ward spire, the spire of despair, was guarded not by wraiths or phantoms, but by Morgar himself. The warlord awaited them on a bridge of black crystal spanning a bottomless chasm. The air crackled with his power. He was larger, more terrible than Kael remembered. The darkness around him a swirling vortex of hatred. "The widower and the traitor," Morgar rasped, his blood-red eyes burning with amusement. "You have saved me the trouble of hunting you down. You have even broken my toys. How efficient." "Your reign ends today, Morgar," Kael said, his voice steady, his light blazing brighter than ever, now that it was no longer fueled by hate, but by protection. "You still believe in reigns? In endings?" Morgar laughed, and the sound cracked the stone at his feet. "I am beyond such mortal concepts. I am becoming a force of nature. The oculus is nearly mine. And you?" His gaze fell on Selena, a possessive, hungry look. "You will be my final sacrifice. Your unique essence will be the key that turns the lock." He attacked. The battle was unlike any Kael had ever fought. Morgar wielded the void not as a weapon, but as an extension of his will. He unraveled the air around them, created pockets of absolute nothingness that threatened to swallow them whole. Kael's light was a brilliant shield, but it was being steadily eroded. "Selena, the spire!" Kael yelled, deflecting a scythe of darkness that would have sheared him in two. Selena darted past the warlord, her own power lashing out, not at Morgar, but at the final ward spire. But Morgar was ready. With a flick of his wrist, he summoned chains of solidified shadow that snapped around her, yanking her to her knees. The chains began to drain her, pulling the violet energy from her body, feeding it directly into the spire. "No!" Kael roared, his light flaring in a desperate, blinding burst. He charged, but Morgar met him with a force that sent him skidding backward, his armor smoking. "It is over, little light," Morgar gloated, standing over Selena as she struggled weakly. "The ritual is beginning. Her life will fuel the oculus, and your world will be unmade. This is the true salvation, the peace of eternal night." Kael lay on the ground, his body screaming in protest, his light guttering. He looked at Selena, saw the life fading from her eyes, and met her gaze. In that look he saw no fear, only a profound, heartbreaking love, and a silent final plea. "Finish it." The ember of revenge was gone, replaced by a cold, clear certainty. Salvation was not in killing Morgar. It was in saving Selena. It was in protecting the future they could have together. He would not let his past destroy his present. He would not lose her. He pushed himself to his feet, not with rage, but with a love so vast it felt like the dawn of a new sun. He looked at Morgar, not as a monster to be slain, but as a tragic error to be corrected. "You are wrong," Kael said, his voice echoing with a strange new power. "Salvation is not in the darkness, nor is it in the light alone." He closed his eyes and reached for the core of his being, for the pure, untempered light he had carried all his life. And then he reached out with his soul, across the bond they had forged, and he touched the heart of Selena's shadow. He did not fight it. He did not cleanse it. He welcomed it. And within her she felt it. She felt his unconditional acceptance, his love flowing into her, not as a conqueror but as a partner. She stopped fighting the chains and instead opened herself completely, offering her shadow to his light. On the bridge, a miracle unfolded. A pillar of pure white radiance erupted from Kael. A wave of absolute, peaceful darkness bloomed from Selena. They met in the middle, above the spire of despair, and instead of an explosion there was a creation. A new star was born in that moment, a silent, brilliant sphere of silver and amethyst, of balanced light and shadow. The sphere pulsed once. The ward spire vaporized. The shadow chains around Selena dissolved. Morgar screamed, a sound of pure, uncomprehending agony, as his connection to the land was severed. The power he had drawn from the spires was gone. He was just a creature again, a powerful one, but no longer a god in the making. The silver amethyst light washed over him, and he recoiled as if from a physical blow, his form flickering, his grand design shattered in an instant. The light faded. Kael stood panting, the world tilting around him. His own light was dim, almost extinguished from the effort. Selena stumbled to her feet, her shadow essence similarly depleted. The tracery on her skin faded to a soft glow. They had won. They had broken the triangle. They had stopped the ritual. But as the dust settled, they both looked towards the central spire. The oculus of midnight was still there. And Morgar, though wounded and denied his ultimate power, was still alive. The final battle was not over. It had only just begun. The central spire was a needle of pure nightmare, piercing the heart of the dead city. The air within hummed with a power so vast it felt like standing at the edge of a collapsing star. The climb was a blur of aching muscles and shared, desperate glances. There were no more words. Everything that needed to be said had been spoken in the silent communion of their joined power on the bridge. They were one soul in two bodies, moving toward an inevitable, terrifying conclusion. The pinnacle was a circular chamber open to the vengeful green sky. In its center, suspended in a cage of crackling violet energy, floated the oculus of midnight. It was not a jewel or a lens of stone, but a whole, a perfect, shimmering sphere of absolute nothingness that drank the light and hope from the world. And before it stood Morgar. He was wounded. The silver amethyst light had scorched his form, leaving fissures of raw, angry energy across his chitinous armor. The godlike aura was gone, replaced by the frantic, cornered rage of a fanatic who sees his grand design crumbling. "You!" he snarled, his voice a ragged tear in the fabric of reality. "You insects! You have defiled a sacred work. But it is not too late. The oculus awakens. It requires only a final push, a catalyst of profound contradiction." His burning eyes fixed on Selena with a possessive, manic hunger. "The woman who is both shadow and something else now. You will serve your purpose yet." He lunged, not for Kael, but for Selena, his claws extended to drag her into the oculus's waiting void. Kael moved on instinct, his body a shield, his sword a flash of defiant gold. But he was depleted, his light a guttering candle. Morgar backhanded him with a force that sent him crashing against the chamber wall. Bones cracked. Darkness swam at the edge of his vision. He saw Selena evade Morgar's grasp, her movements fluid with a grace born of desperation. She was weaving her remaining shadow not to attack, but to disrupt the energy streams feeding the oculus. She was trying to contain it, to starve it. "It's no use, my child." Morgar laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "The reaction has begun. It cannot be stopped, can only be completed. With or without you, it will consume this world. But with you, oh, with you it will be a masterpiece." Kael pushed himself up, his body screaming in protest. He looked at Selena, at the fierce, beautiful determination on her face, as she fought a losing battle against the inevitable. He saw the truth then, as clearly as he saw the love in her eyes when she glanced at him. Stopping Morgar was not enough. The oculus itself had to be unmade, and its power, a vortex of pure shadow, could not be destroyed by light, could only be balanced, neutralized from within. Salvation is not in vengeance, but in love that heals even darkness itself. The realization was a perfect, terrible calm. He knew what she was going to do, and he knew he could not stop her. To try would be to doom them all. Their eyes met across the chamber. In that final, endless moment, a lifetime passed between them. The shared pain, the fragile trust, the kiss that had healed him, the love that had redeemed them both. He saw her acceptance, her goodbye. "Kael," she whispered, and her voice was a soft brush against his soul. "Let me go. It's the only way." A sob tore from his throat, raw and helpless. He gave a single agonized nod. Selena turned to face the oculus. A serene smile touched her lips. Then she stopped fighting Morgar's energy. Instead, she opened her arms and ran, not away from the void, but directly into it. "No!" Morgar's shriek was one of thwarted possession, not grief. Selena plunged into the heart of the oculus. For a moment, she was silhouetted against the absolute nothingness, a figure of pure, brave light. Then the shadow essence within her, the very power Morgar had sought to exploit, erupted. It was not an explosion of destruction, but an act of profound creation. Her love, her spirit, her very soul flooded the void. The perfect darkness of the oculus began to churn, to swirl with threads of silver and amethyst, the colors of their bonded power. The oculus shuddered. The nothingness fought back, trying to consume her, but her sacrifice was an anchor, a truth it could not process. Light and shadow given freely, not taken by force. With a sound that was neither a scream nor a song, but the birth cry of a new universe, the oculus of midnight collapsed in on itself. There was a silent, blinding flash of pure white. Then nothing. The hum of power ceased. The violet energy cage flickered and died. The chamber was still. Morgar stood frozen, a statue of ash and defeat. The fissures on his body widened, leaking not blood, but motes of fading darkness. What have you done?" he rasped, and then his form crumbled, dissolving into a pile of inert, gray dust, blown away by a wind that had not been there moments before. Kael crawled forward, every movement agony. Where the oculus had floated, Selena lay on the cold floor. Her body was fading, translucent, the last of her substance merging with the air. The shadow tracery was gone from her skin, which now glowed with a soft, internal light. He gathered her into his arms, her form as light as a sigh. "Selena!" he choked, tears finally streaming down his face, carving paths through the grime and blood. "Please!" Her twilight eyes fluttered open. They were clear, peaceful, filled with a love so vast it threatened to break him. "You see," she whispered, her voice like the rustle of leaves. "It was the only way. Love to heal the darkness." She reached up a fading hand and touched the pendant that always hung around her neck. A simple, smooth stone the color of a twilight sky. It was warm. "Take it," she breathed. "So you never forget the balance. So you never forget us." Her hand fell. Her form dissolved completely in his arms, becoming one with the dawn now breaking over the sunken city. The first true golden rays of the sun pierced the green haze, illuminating the ruins not as a tomb, but as a place of ending and beginning. Kael was alone. The silence was absolute. The war was over. He knelt there for a long time, the warmth of the sun on his back, the cold of the stone beneath his knees. The rage was gone. The grief remained, but it was a clean grief, without the poison of hatred. It was the price of love, and he would pay it forever. Slowly he stood. In his palm he held her pendant. It glowed with a faint, steady pulse, a tiny, perfect flame of silver and amethyst. It was not a symbol of loss, but of the salvation she had bought with her life. A salvation for the world and for his own heart. He turned and walked away from the spire, out of the dead city and into the dawn. He did not look back. His path was no longer one of vengeance or even of redemption. It was a path of memory, of balance. The man who walked into the growing light was not the broken warrior who had entered the sands, nor the vengeful widower who had buried his family. He was something new. A man who had learned that the strongest light is born from an understanding of the dark, and that the greatest salvation is found not in destroying what we fear, but in loving what is true. He held the pendant tight, its gentle warmth a constant, comforting presence against his skin. The flame of salvation was not a fire to destroy, but a quiet, enduring ember of love, carried forward into the waiting world. We hope you were swept away by the journey of Kael and Selena in Flame of Salvation. Their story of love, loss, and ultimate sacrifice in a world of balanced light and shadow was a profound one to tell. If this tale of forbidden love and epic redemption found a place in your heart, we would be deeply honored if you could support our channel, Velvet Valor Romantasy Audiobook. Subscribe to ensure you never miss our next journey into realms of magic, passion, and adventure. Let us know what you thought in the comments below. Were you hoping for a different fate for Kael and Selena? Which moment resonated with you the most? Your thoughts and feedback truly guide our future stories. And if you felt the ember of this story glow for you, please like this video. It helps us immeasurably in sharing these tales with more listeners like you. Thank you for listening. Until the next adventure, may your own life be filled with a balanced and beautiful light. Fade out with a final, gentle, magical soundscape.